All right, welcome to Creator Hardware, and today we're talking about speccing out your new laptop or desktop for video editing. So the first part of this video is going to be generalities. It's going to be a lot of stuff that you need to consider no matter what resolution you're editing at. And then after that, we'll get into specific needs for different resolutions. All right, so first thing you need to consider is, well, storage. Video editing eats a lot of storage. This is something across the board you're going to need to worry about, whether you're editing with a laptop or with a desktop. Video files eat up a lot of memory. So one file, depending on your codec, might, load up your 1 terabyte hard drive in your laptop or your desktop. The most amount of storage you can get in whatever platform you're looking at buying, always spend the extra money. Because trust me, a 1 terabyte hard drive on a laptop, you will fill up fast. I fill up a 1 terabyte NVMe on this desktop, well, every month. And that's just the nature of video editing. So always spec as much hard drive space as you can or plan on doing external solution. The next thing we need to worry about is system RAM. Random access memory. It'll always be listed as RAM in your spec sheet. Whether you're building it or buying it, RAM is super important for video editing. A lot of your footage, a lot of your performance in the timeline will depend on your system RAM, your system memory. So 16 gigabytes, whether you're editing on a laptop or a desktop, is the bare minimum. And really, 32 gigabytes or even 64 gigabytes is much, much better for smooth editing performance. To give an example, the computer over there has 32 gigabytes and timeline performance with 4K ProRes is not good. Whereas this system is 64 gigabytes, buttery smooth, I have no problems because it can utilize a lot more RAM. Both Adobe and Davinci Resolve both store a lot of the footage in RAM. So they're both very RAM intensive softwares, so get more. Get as much as you can on your platform. Now laptops are generally going to be pretty limited on that unless you're going to a heavy gaming laptop. You might get 32, but they're very expensive. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is, well, a discrete graphics card. No matter what platform you're going with, AMD or Intel, you need to have a separate discrete graphics card. Integrated graphics will make your render times extremely slow. Even with less intensive workloads, a lot of stuff is put onto your graphics card. If you're using the integrated graphics that's on the processor itself, it will slow down your render times. You want a dedicated discrete graphics card that's available both in laptops and desktops. In a desktop, it's going to look something like this. And yes, I have a random 2080 sitting on my desk. So that's the basics. You really need a discrete graphics card. You really need a lot of RAM and a lot of storage. So let's get into specifics about different file sizes. Let's talk 1080p. 1080p footage for the most part is not very intensive and it can be done with a Intel or AMD R5 chip. Even lower spec is probably okay. 3 series for an Intel. Right now, AMD really doesn't have anything low end, but you still will need a discrete graphics card. Gaming laptops and desktops make great video editing rigs because, well, they use the same technology. Graphics cards, memory, etc. So look at gaming products for video editing. You can get the graphics card 1650, 1660 on the AMD side. They don't have a whole lot of lower end stuff. The 6600 should do okay, a little higher end than the 1650 or 1660. A RTX 3060 is about the maximum I would recommend for this level. Anything above that is you're just kind of wasting money at that point. All right, 4K. Now this one is a little more intensive, but we're talking basic codecs, not the high end, not like Blackmagic ProRes or Raw footage, we're talking like Sony basic 4K, which is more intensive than 1080p, but not much more. And well, honestly, you can get by with the same setup. It's not that intensive. A mid-level CPU, a mid-level graphics card will get you basically the same performance. Again, before though, you want a little more system memory if you can. But a processor and the GPU, you're gonna be fine on the same level hardware. So you've got a good, if you wanna upgrade a camera. All right, so let's talk the heavier codecs, the 4K ProRes, the 4K RAW, the 6K RAW, the 8K. You're gonna need a beefier system. You're gonna need more horsepower. On those, I'm gonna recommend something like a 5950X from AMD, or a i9 from Intel, or a Threadripper. And you're definitely gonna want a beefier GPU, discrete graphics card. You're gonna want something with a good bit of VRAM, a 3080, a 3080 Ti, but it's a lot more intensive. When you're working with those kind of footage, your CPU, your RAM is all gonna be working harder. Now, when it comes to those higher end CPUs, you're gonna need to step up on the cooling side of it. The i5s, the R5s, standard tower cooler will work fine. But on the higher end stuff, you're gonna need to step it up. You're gonna need a beefy tower cooler, air cooler, or you're gonna need an AIO, or like I have, a custom water loop, because they get toasty, especially on long renders. One of the drawbacks with using a laptop is, well, thermals. They can only shed so much heat because they're limited on how much fans and all that stuff they can put in there. And you'll see a lot of times your render times will be longer on a laptop because it can't shed the heat fast enough. So you get thermal throttle. I've got an i7 laptop that, trust me, 4K Sony footage edited great. Render times were horrendous. Render times were double runtime. Whereas on this, the same footage I can render out in a third of runtime, simply just because of heat load. My 9900K system is the same. Because it doesn't have thermal throttle issues, it renders it out in substantially less time than the runtime of the video, versus a laptop that will thermal throttle. So that's why I prefer desktops over laptops for editing. I know it's handier to have a laptop, but that's one of the drawbacks. Plus limited memory, limited storage. As always, hit record, hit upload. Thanks for watching. This is Creator Hardware.